Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tio and Tito podcast. I'm Tito.
No, Theo.
What's up, man?
I know. How you been?
Good. Just celebrated my 31st birthday.
31.
31.
It's
Yeah,
big.
you're 31 too, yeah?
Yeah, I turn 32 next month.
Yeah, man. I feel like after 30, your next milestone is like 50, right?
Milestones. I don't know, man. I think 35 is a big one. Maybe. No? I still
No, I don't.
I still
I
feel
don't
like I'm
know.
25, so I don't know.
Well, good for you. I'm glad you feel that way. Well, my body says otherwise. Um, but no, it was cool, man. Good little celebrations going on, and yeah, excited to celebrate yours next month because it comes out when, or your birthday is Ant Man's, the new Ant Man movie's premiering, right?
Yep, and Ant-Man Quantumania. Those that know me know I'm a huge Marvel fan, superhero fan, so I was like, for my birthday, it's coming out my birthday weekend, so this is what we're doing. We're gonna go do some type of all you can eat somewhere. I just want to eat a lot of food. You don't really get the chance to do that as much with kids
Mm-hmm.
now. So definitely want to do that, and then yeah, go watch a premiere weekend.
I wish they had like all you can eat movie theaters. I mean,
Like they like kind of like at baseball games. There's like the all you can eat section.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Can you
yeah.
imagine in movie theaters? I think some people, some places have the free refills on popcorn and stuff.
All you can eat popcorn. Oh, yay.
Yeah, I remember. I
Oh,
think it was an AMC that was by us. They would do that. They would do all you can eat popcorn, and so he would just get the popcorn and then get like the big like the brown trays where you put your food in and just like fill that up
uh,
with popcorn and go fill up the popcorn again.
oh
So
man, I
then you would
can't.
just have to buy one large popcorn and your whole crew would have popcorn for the movie.
Heck no, man. That's too buttery, too salty.
Yeah,
I guess that comes with being 31.
right. Too buttery, too
uh,
salty. That's funny.
yeah. Well, I guess we'll jump right into it. So, I don't know if you can tell, but Eric and I are rocking our youth ministry T-shirts. Uh,
St.
yours is hard to
Mike's.
read. Which St. Mike's?
St.
Okay, Good
Mike's.
Shepherd.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today's topic, where I had asked Eric, I mean, we've been going back and forth on what different topics we want to talk about, and we decided we wanted to talk about a little bit more about ourselves and our background, and specifically our ministry background.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I'll kick us off. Yeah, man. So when I was younger, my my mom, she would take me to church with my grandpa, and as a little kid, it didn't really mean much, right? And I think that's normal for kids. Um, I think the most exciting part for me during those times was playing Mercy with my brothers when we do the Our Father, and we would hold hands, we would just like squeeze as hard as we could, when doing the piece, I would just squeeze my brother's hands as hard as I could. Um, that and the donuts afterward, right?
Donuts.
If if,
It's
if they were
always
if they were
donuts.
giving if they were giving out donuts, those were the two things that I find most memorable. Going to church when I was younger. It actually wasn't until high school, um, my freshman year of high school, when my mom told me that she had enrolled me for something called pre-confirmation.
Pre-confirmation.
Yeah, pre-confirmation. So that's the equivalent of like uh, a year one high school class at church or CCD. But yeah, I had no idea what this was. I honestly was a little kind of bitter and upset that she would do this because uh, she did this unknowingly. And I had never been part of a CCD class prior to. So again, I had no idea what to expect.
Mm.
Um, so we had an orientation, and there was a lot of people I knew from high school. I was like, okay, this might not be too bad. There's some, uh, I have some friends here. There's some cute ladies that I get to see once a week now, outside of school. Um, so yeah, that was okay. It was like that's when I realized, okay, this might not be too bad.
Yeah.
And then we had our first class. And I don't know if you ever played this game, but our youth minister at the time, Pat Clasby, shout out to Pat. He introduced us to this game called I don't, it was is it I, mean, I think he called it boys versus girls musical chairs. It wasn't really like your traditional musical chairs, but essentially what would happen is you have a set of boys and a set of girls in the center of a circle, and then if you were a guy, you would grab uh, the opposite sex's hand, so a female, and then vice versa. And then so
Mm.
there was an odd. There was always more boys or more girls in the middle. And so when music would play, you would just do this. You would run around, and it's like, okay, who can I find? Who's the cutest person I can find?
Yeah.
Let me grab their hand. Um, no, I wasn't doing that. Maybe I was. I don't really remember. But so so that was fun. It was cool. And then that first class, we kind of dove into it right away. Um, and it wasn't. I came out of that first class, unsure of how I want if I wanted to continue almost, right? It
Mm.
was it was fun. It was all fun and games at first, and then we kind of dove into some serious stuff. Not it wasn't like too serious, but for someone who hadn't really had a background in knowing their faith, it's a lot to take in. Um, so fast forward to the year one retreat, and I was in band at the time, so we went on retreat, but it landed in the middle of a tournament day. So we actually had to leave Saturday morning and come back Saturday night. So we missed
Okay.
a good chunk of the retreat because for most retreats, it's like you arrive Friday night, then you have the whole day Saturday, and then you leave like Sunday afternoon.
Hmm.
So my year one retreat experience wasn't all that great, to be honest. I mean, it was fun coming in.
I'm telling Pat.
Um, he knows.
Yeah.
He knows. It's hard for those who have to who are in sports and
Oh
extracurriculars.
yeah, you see it
It's
all the
not.
time, especially now that we're like running retreats, and you'll see
Mm-hmm.
the parents come like, "Oh, but they have to do sports Saturday, Sunday." I was like, I know." Like we try to give different options, but we try to tell them they're gonna miss out
Yeah.
from a lot of growth, right, in those retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you miss a part of it, you're kind of not necessarily left behind, but everyone else has connected in a different way
Yes.
that you kind of missed. And
Yeah.
it's almost like you get back to the group and you're like, why is
What
everyone so
happened?
different? Yeah, something
Yeah.
happened and I missed it.
Why is everyone crying? Why is everyone hugging? Why is everyone swaying and dancing? And what's happening? Um, but it was a good. The majority of my friends were in band at the time, so we were collectively like, okay, we came back into this. Like, what's going on? Or maybe not even that. Maybe it's just like, we're back and let's just get the weekend over with, kind of a thing.
Mm.
Um, so again, year one retreat was kind of a bust for me personally. It wasn't until let me just fast forward to year two retreat, so confirmation, where I think that's where I had my aha moment.
So
My little
you're a
aha moment.
junior at this time?
Sophomore. I'm a
Sophomore.
I'm
Okay.
a sophomore in high
Sophomore.
school. Yeah. So I went into retreat again. This was I didn't have high expectations given that my first retreat was meh. Fortunately, the year two retreat did not land on a band tournament weekend, so we all had the opportunity to stay the full weekend. Um, and it was at a different campsite, and so when we arrived Friday night, there's some lull time while you're waiting for everyone to arrive. And this particular one of my memories from this retreat was this they had a playground and like this big metal slide. Um, and so of course my dumbass is like, let me slide down the slide real quick. And it's pretty steep. Um, and it was dark and it was wet because it wasn't snowing, but it was icy.
Mm.
And I slid down and went straight into the dirt and the snow. And so my first night I spent with wet pants. My ass is just wet,
Oh
covered in
no.
snow and ice. So I was like, okay, this is how we're gonna start the weekend. Okay, this is cool. Um, you know, Fortunately, I got over it real quick because we started playing games again and whatnot, and it was all fun. And then after the games, we kind of dove into night prayer, and then that's where I was first introduced to the everything skit. Are you familiar with Everything
Oh,
Skit?
the everything skit. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Everything
Yeah.
Skit, YouTube it. There's billions of videos, not billions. There's a lot of videos out there.
Yes.
Um,
Thousands. There's
and
definitely thousands of videos of it.
and if you've never seen it, uh,
Mm,
man,
it's powerful.
it is really powerful. Especially if it's your first time experiencing it. When I was actively participating in ministry, I would see it, once or twice a year, and every time I would still, uh, I would still cry and shed a tear.
Yeah.
It's that powerful.
Yeah.
Um, and I just remember being, I don't remember exactly what was going through my mind, but I just know there was a lot of emotion that I hadn't, experienced before. Um, and I think that was just my moment where I knew, like, okay, this is something I want to invest my time with. This is something I want to really open my heart to. And that's what I did that weekend. And it was the best retreat experience ever,
Mhm.
during that time. Um, and, as a result of that, I was always after the retreats, like the following classes, like it's such a good energy, such a good vibe. Um, and, I think it was during that time too, where I made good friends outside of outside of my high school circle of friends, right? So obviously with uh with the classes, it's not always people from Mara Mesa High School or wherever, what high school. I don't know if the same is for you, but for our confirmation classes, we had a hodgepodge of high schools in that one class. So yeah, I'm to this day, uh people from that class are my lifelong friends. Um, and I'm very fortunate that my mom did end up decide to did force enroll me into the pre-con class.
Yeah.
Um, because I wouldn't be where I am today if she didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's a lot more that happened after kind of the that year two confirmation, but I don't want to keep rambling. I want to give you a chance to kind of maybe talk about your initial experiences,
Yeah.
and then we can kind of come back to me.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how we have a very similar like upbringing and faith, and I think that has to do maybe a little more with culture than faith. Just because me being Latino, right? My mom's Mexican, my dad's Costa Rican, both faithful Catholics going to mass every Sunday, right? So
Hmm.
we would always go to misa, and and it was interesting because while we're little, my parents would only go to mass, but we were very like we weren't very involved, right? Like we were just it was just a thing that we did as a family. It was go to mass every Sunday. But when I was like 8 or 9, my parents started getting super involved in the church, right?
Hmm.
And they got involved in this ministry. It started off as a youth ministry, and then it grew so much that it kind of broke off and did its own thing. It was still sanctioned by the Catholic Church and everything, but they were part of the charismatic renewal. That was like a big movement within the Catholic Church. And so it felt more Pentecostal at times, but we still had the sacraments and all that. So I feel like I got a little bit of both when I was a kid. So I had this like very like powerful like sermons that were being preached. The music was like always upbeat. We were at church. When they started going to that, we were at church more than half of the week, right? Like there was
Hmm.
like Mondays was family nights, Wednesday was for the youth, and then like Thursday was women's night, Friday was men's night, and then Saturday was like teachings, and we were there all day. And myself, so part of my passion for music actually came about when we started going to church that often. I when I was like 9, the drummer there, because there's so much time to kill because my parents are volunteering and helping with everything. I started just kind of going to the drum set and just playing on the drums, and
Yes.
then they slowly started to teach me how to play the drums. And one of the drummers was like, "Hey, this kid actually can play." So I remember by the time I was like 10 and 11, I was playing at the different events. So I was just
Wow.
in music ministry that young, and that was just kind of like church for me, right? And I
Mm,
felt like I was doing that, but at the same time I had my friends in school, and but it was very much just like focus on church. That was kind of like our family thing was going to that church.
mm,
When I got to high school age, I kind of started wanting to do my own thing. I guess it's just like the rebellious
yeah. You're,
personality, right? I was like, yeah, we're going to church. I like it. I like playing the drums at church, but I want something different. I want something that's mine. Like this is our family thing. I want to do my own thing. And I decided to not go to that ministry anymore. And it was pretty far away, like from where we were. It was another city. So I started going to a church that was close to us, and they had a really cool Spanish ministry and youth ministry. I started helping there, and and that kind of introduced me to something different. Because in growing up, we had this like church community, right? And everything was about the community, about being there for one another. But here we had a smaller, more intimate community, and it was something I hadn't experienced before. So that was like freshman year of high school. I
mm,
started going to this smaller youth group and realizing like, hey, there's different ways that you can build community with someone, right? And I was just drawn to that way more. Um, my parents never really forced me to go into confirmation,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think I brought it up once, and I was like, how old do I have to be to get confirmed? She's like, before you're 18. And I was already a sophomore in high school. I was like, I think I should join the confirmation program next year, maybe. So I was one of the older kids in the program. And at that point, we just went to the church that was around the corner from
Uh,
my parents' house. And again, I just started going on my own at one of the confirmation retreats. And keep in mind, because I had been in ministry for so long and had been involved in the church, I felt like I knew it all when I was in
mm,
confirmation. It was like everything that they were teaching us was like, I already know those Bible verses. I already know all that. Like, I feel like a lot of the kids that go to private school or that went to private Catholic school, sometimes they can be like that when they go into those classes. They're like, we already know
mm-hmm.
this. Or so that was me. I was one of those kids. and and when I was going through it, I think the first retreat that we had, uh, there's these they're at my age, but again, I was one of the older kids in the class, and they went up there to talk about youth group and inviting
Mm,
people to youth group. I was like, you know what? I'll give that a shot. I'm going here anyway. Let me go ahead and go to this youth group. And honestly, I think that's when I felt like the closeness of being in community and what the Bible means by when there's two or three in my presence, I am there, or two or three
mm-hmm.
unite, I'm present, I'm there. That's when I felt it the most,
Mm-hmm.
because this youth group was very intimate. Like we would go into the youth room and they wouldn't have like activities planned out. It would just be couches. We would sit down, and sometimes we would just talk and just sit there, hang out, talk. And it was a small group. There was like six, seven, eight of us at most at a time, and the youth minister there was very like he was very calming, and yeah, shout out to Jim. He was an amazing youth minister, and someone that I try to model what he did with us with the youth now. And it's just amazing what he was able to do in us. And we always knew that we had somewhere to go to talk about our problems, and like we talked about everything there. Like some of the conversation we would have there that we were too afraid to tell our parents, too
Yeah.
afraid to tell even our best friends in school. And
Yep.
it became this really close group that we were able to be that honest with one another. And we knew that we wouldn't be judged and that we would be praying for one another. And I
Mm,
think that was my first experience with that. And and obviously going through youth group and then confirmation, they were actually the ones that convinced me later on after I was confirmed and in college to go to the Newman Club. in college,
Mm.
which is then where I met my wife, Lily. So it was really interesting experiencing like different types of communities within the church. But the
Yeah.
one that I feel made the most impact on me was that small close knit group, right?
Hmm.
And in that youth group when I was in high school. And even like from there we did like a World Youth Day uh event like once I was in college and with those same people. And yeah, it's amazing the friendships that you can make from that and the closeness. Like that was a really good group. Unfortunately, don't really talk with a lot of those guys anymore. Everyone just kind of splits up when you go to college. You go your separate ways. But I
Yeah.
remember when I was in high school, I felt very lost,
Yeah.
and that was somewhere that I could go, and know that I could just be myself
Yeah.
and feel good with that. So yeah, it's really cool how they were able to do that for me, because now when I help out and volunteer in youth ministry, that's what I try to do. I try to
Yeah.
be there for the other kids, even if it's 100 kids in a room, or
Yeah.
just like a handful of us, like going out to get wings or something. Like you want to
Yeah.
be there for one another and talk, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's for like coming back to kind of my side. So after confirmation, um, you get to come back if you want uh, to be a junior facilitator or a junior
Yep.
catechist, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was something I was really looking forward to, just because I looked up to my junior facilitators. Um, you know, they're kind of the ones that really help shape, my experience in pre-con and confirmation, or year one and year two confirmation classes. And so to kind of do that for the incoming youth at the time was something I was really looking forward to. And again, since it was voluntarily, that you knew the people that were going to be there wanted to be there.
Yeah.
They wanted to express their faith. They wanted to be a witness to the youth. Um, and this was kind of something that, again, you had a shared purpose, and it wasn't as big as, or the junior facilitators that came back. Obviously, it's not going to be the whole class, you know. Um, so the circle becomes a little tighter and closer, um, and so it kind of leads to closer relationships, right?
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, junior facilitating for both year one and year two was amazing. And then Pat had this rule where after you graduated high school, you couldn't come back to facilitate. You'd have to like go off and kind of do your own thing for 2 years.
Mm.
Um, but I was an exception to that rule because at that time, uh, my youngest brother, Lawrence, he has kind of a developmental learning, not really a disability, but kind of delayed learning. So because of that, Pat let me stay to help kind of be close to him and mentor him. And so that
Yeah.
experience, being able to be with my brother, my youngest brother, and kind of shape him through that, uh, or shape him, not shape him, but be with him through those classes, was such a wonderful experience. I remember we went on retreat together. Mind you, my brother, he's not a crier. He doesn't express emotion. But I remember at one of the retreats, uh, we were doing like the family letters, so the surprise
Oh
family
yeah.
letter. So again, another impactful moment for our youth. Um, so he got the letter from my mom, um, and I remember he just approached me, um, and he just gave me the biggest hug, and I was like, I I couldn't do. There's nothing I could do except hug him back and just start crying and bawling
Oh
because
yeah.
this is the last thing I was expecting, last person I was expecting from him. Um, and yeah, it was such a great moment, to be able to share that with him. And it was one of those, again, it's moments like that, you know, that kind of solidify and um that prove to me like I made the right choice in sticking this out. And you know uh God knew I had to be there in that time, in that moment.
Yeah.
um and so kind of fast forward again, um you know this I did after again, I was since I was an exception to that rule, I was volunteering, really since junior of high school all the way up to, oh gosh, I feel like it was recent. Up till just like a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um so just a few years ago, Pat, who was at Good Shepherd, he went over to St. Patrick's. Ironic.
Yeah.
Pat went to St. Patrick's and became the youth minister over there. Um, and so after a little break, Angel and I decided that we wanted to go, help him out. And so that was nice because we had not done it for a while, so it was nice to kind of be back volunteering. And this time, I was an adult facilitator for a while, but I think after some time away, and at this time, Angel and I were, oh no, we were still dating at the time when he was still a Good Shepherd. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
I think at this time we were married for some time, and so it's a different. It was so cool to be a facilitator in like different stages of my life because
Yeah.
it provided such a different perspective. Um, at some of the retreats, there's different witness presentations and different talks that are given throughout the weekend, and putting myself in like the different talks, my experiences would have changed the different stages I was in while facilitating. If I were to give that same talk 10 years ago versus now, it would be
Oh yeah.
totally different talk. I mean, the foundation is still there, right? But kind of the experiences that come at you and kind of shape who you are, there's I think there's a big difference in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one of our goals for Angel and I is we really want to give the family talk one day. Just because Angel gave the family talk, I think maybe she didn't. Maybe it was a relationship with God. She gave one of the talks, but you know, she talked about her family, and it was different back then, right? This is when she was a youth, when she was in high school, and again, with her talk back then versus how it's going to be now, it's going to be so much different, and it's going to be so cool to see that perspective and how that's changed over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting you mentioned that, like volunteering at different stages of life, because I did the same thing, right? When I got confirmed the next year, I came back and they had a similar rule. Like if you came back, at the time, the youth minister said you had to be basically a teacher's aide, like a TA. Like you weren't
Mm-hmm.
gonna like lead discussions or give talks or anything. You're just gonna volunteer, help out, help with snacks, chairs, tables, and
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I liked that. I liked being able to do it that way, and then slowly like ease into it. And since then, since I've turned 18, I've been in ministry. There was 1 year when I wasn't, and that was the
Mhm.
year we moved to San Diego, right? We moved to Mira Mesa
Oh yeah.
in
Okay.
2018, and it was actually kind of a nice break
Yeah.
because like we didn't have to worry about being at a specific service for mass and then being
Mhm.
at like life nights and helping out with youth and stuff like that. Like Lily and I were able to just kind of enjoy ourselves and go to church like when we wanted and do these things. But obviously the itch comes back and you're like, okay, I want to serve
Yeah.
again. And so we had that 1 year when we were doing anything, and it's funny because in that 1 year we Lily got pregnant with Toby, so we had a kid, and then going back into ministry now with a kid is already completely different,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like now I'm in ministry helping out with confirmation stuff at St. Michael's now with 3 kids, and it's funny because the last retreat we did, I was the oldest person there, and I was
No
like, "Oh
way.
man, how did I become the old man?" Like, it was funny because Vivi, our youth minister, she's there, and she invited another youth minister from another parish to help out, and then just some other like facilitators to help, right? And it was a smaller retreat. It was an optional retreat, so that's why we had a smaller group, so we didn't need as many adults. But I was the oldest one there, and I was like, dang, it's crazy how quick it just goes from like I'm the youngest one, and like I'm the ones over here having fun with the kids playing basketball and football like during the
Yeah.
breaks and like just playing card games and whatever. And now I'm like, okay, if something goes down, I need to be on it. I want to make sure like I'm around to help, but also it the conversations you have with the youth change, and I think
Oh
they
yeah.
change for the better because they
Yeah.
start looking up to you, right? They start looking at you differently. When I was 18 having conversations with them, they almost look at me the same. They're like, "Oh, he really likes this. He came back, and that's about it." And we're talking about the same topics that we like, right? But now, like, they'll come up to me and they'll have like really serious questions and or want to talk about serious stuff, and I'm like, I'm blessed to be in that position now,
Yeah.
to be able to help them because of the life experiences that I've had,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like on one of the last retreats we had, one of the girls came up to me and said that she felt like I was really honest in my talk, and I was very transparent about like my weaknesses and how I feel at times.
Yeah.
And she's like, I feel the same way. Like, can I talk to you about it? I was like, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Like, like to be able to be an adult that they can go to for those types of things, it just, yeah, it's such a blessing to be able to help in that way. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how the little moments in life change us, but we're able to just bring something different to the ministry team and to the youth that really need it the most.
Did you ever feel like you had a calling to become a youth minister?
Yeah. the
Yeah.
the thing with that is I think at one point, I don't know when it was. I think when I heard that one of the parishes needed a youth minister, and it always crosses my mind. I was like, could I apply? I should probably
Yeah.
apply. I was like, no, no, I don't want to do that because I know the hard work that it is, right? Like
Yeah.
my sister's a youth minister, and that's a lot of work. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been on parish councils. Uh, um, my madrina, she's a youth minister. She started youth ministry. Now she's like the director of youth ministry for LA, and it's crazy just to see like everything that they go through. And
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like it'd be too stressful for me,
Mm-hmm.
like because it's one thing to volunteer, to be able to give my time to share my faith, but I
Yeah.
feel like if I were a youth minister, I would feel responsible for their faith,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like I understand that you can't like hold yourself accountable for all of those students,
Yeah.
right? And because like right now we have like 100 kids enrolled, and we were actually just talking to Vivi about this with Matt Rossio, who was the previous youth
Okay.
minister at that church,
Yeah.
and we were talking about it because the idea really is to disciple one person at a time. So there's a book called One Disciple at a Time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of going back to what Pope Francis has been saying of meeting people where they're at, but you need to build a relationship with them. We need
Yeah.
to go to them, share Jesus obviously, but show them that we love them, we're there for them, and no matter what, we're going to be their friend.
Yeah.
And then through that we can see the spirit move in them, right?
Yeah.
And I've always kind of treated ministry that way. But I'm able to be more selective as just a volunteer than if I were a youth minister,
Yeah.
right? Like have you thought about being a youth minister?
Absolutely. It got as far as, you know, Pat so graciously, taking me under his wing and letting me lead his classes,
Mm,
and lead retreat team meetings and confirmation pre-con class meetings. Um I think there was a year, maybe even 2 years, where he just let me run with things. Obviously with his guidance and uh with his mentoring. He kind of turned the reins over me, and I was the guy up in front of 100, 200 teenagers. And if you were to ask me, you know, if I when I was a freshman or sophomore year in high school and I was in year one, year two classes, if I was going to be that guy, I would have said, heck no. Um, but it was a really great experience, being able to lead those classes. And I think,
mm-hmm.
for me, I I think Pat shielded me from kind of what you were talking about. the stresses, the midnight phone calls of
The parents.
of the from the parents exactly, and it's the teenagers who are having like little crises and whatnot, and so I only really saw like kind of, I guess, the fun side of ministry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or kind of not having to deal with the stresses of it. So at that time I was, uh I thought that it was something that I could do.
Yeah.
um but also I really liked my job at the time. um so I was in IT, I think, at SDSU still, and I don't want to leave that. And so there were some, I forget, I think there were some part-time ministry positions opening up, and I convinced myself that I could do both. And
Yeah.
after some really uh hard thinking, it was something like, okay, no, because then I wouldn't be able to give 100% of my time to the youth ministry,
Yeah.
and that's not fair to the program or to the kids um that are in that program,
Yeah.
right? But I'm so thankful for Pat and for the other youth ministers that kind of let me lead, let me kind of uh drive the different classes and uh the different teachings that we were doing for those weekends and whatnot. Because it not only was it helpful to the youth, but it was helpful to me too,
Yeah.
because I was learning, you know, every single weekend, every single week, different
Yeah.
things, new things, and different perspectives from different teens who would ask questions, or kind of present you with a different point of view on a certain teaching or a certain topic. Especially with the parables, it's almost like reading Shakespeare. I feel like
Yeah.
you can see it one way, but then youth comes back at you saying, well, the interpretation might be a little different. Obviously, there is kind of a right interpretation, right? But it's good to hear the youth out and see kind of how their perspective is on different teachings and whatnot. But obviously, the goal is to kind of lead them onto what the Catholic Church believes in, right? So,
Yeah.
but anyways, yeah, you know, uh, short answer was yes. There was a time in my life where I felt like I was going to become a youth minister. Um, but also I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of glad that I didn't,
Yeah.
and that I have if I want to go back, then I can volunteer.
Yeah.
Um, and if not, then kind of just chill.
Yeah. I think to be honest and frank, it is crazy to think about trying to have a family in Southern California with the pay that a youth minister makes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's unless you've put in like decades and you're like a well-known youth minister and you go to a church that's able to pay you a livable wage, like if you're able to do it, it's great. But the majority of like youth ministers that I've seen, either the wife or husband that's not the youth minister, the partner is able to make the majority of the money, and then the the other partner is able to do the ministry, because it's just, man, it's that would be tough, right?
it's
And
a really,
yeah, and honestly, like I'm in awe by the youth ministers that I meet, all of them. Like
yeah.
shout out to all the ones out here that I work with, Kirsten, VV, and I don't know how you guys do it sometimes, because I know VV's a full time student, also doing full time ministry and taking the mandatory courses so she can continue doing ministry. And I was like, man, you guys are rock stars, right? Like I show up when I'm asked to show up. I'll play cajon and I'll give a talk, and that's all I'll do. Like those are the real rock stars. And honestly, like I know, like in technical terms, it's not really a vocation. It's more of a calling, but it's borderline a vocation, right?
Yeah.
To be in youth ministry and to be called to help the youth in that way, especially now, like we're talking like post pandemic, and like those years were so hard to be able to work with the youth and keep them
Virtually.
engaged.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it did so many things to their mental, to their emotions, that they need it more now than ever to know that there's a group, there's people, there's adults that really care about them and want their well-being, not just for their mental health but for their spiritual health too. And yeah, so definitely rock stars.
Yep. So
Yeah,
much love. Grateful for all the youth ministers that I've encountered in my life.
yeah,
Again, they've really shaped me to the man who I am today, and kind of my relationship with God and where my faith is at. So,
yeah, yeah,
but
and even like some volunteers too. Like I always remember, and I've told this to one of the guys that taught me music when I was really little. Right, his
mm,
name's Jason, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook. Send him messages once in a while, and I've told him, I was like, dude, like you really like set me on the right course when I was
yeah,
younger. Right, like you introduced me to music, but the importance of worship, like all that stuck with me. His own testimony, I still remember his testimony, hearing it when I was like a freshman in high school, and all that. So like those people, and then obviously I've talked about Jim, talked about Tyrene, like all these youth ministers that have made an impact on me and helped me grow in my own faith. Like it's crazy how so many of these youth ministers might not even know the impact that they're making.
absolutely.
Right? Like, have you? I actually experienced this um, not too long ago, where we had a kid who was in confirmation, and he didn't want to confirm, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he said, "My parents are making me do it. I don't want to go to church." And I was like, you know what? Like, we don't want to force this on anyone. Let's have a talk with your parents. We talked with the priest, and he didn't go forward. That he left. And then later on, when he was 20, we were invited to his confirmation because he decided to
Oh,
come back.
wow.
So maybe he just wasn't ready, right?
Yeah,
But at the same time, you're just there to love them, to
exactly.
share with them,
Yeah,
to yeah, like yes, you want to share the faith, the importance of the faith, of the truth, but at the same time, you're there to love them, so they know they got someone in their corner,
absolutely.
right? And I'm very thankful for all the people that growing up I knew they were in my corner, right?
Yeah,
And to this day, I know I can reach out to them, and some have passed away, but the majority of them I can reach out to, and they'll listen. They'll still listen. I think it's maybe a thing. Once a youth minister, always a youth minister, right?
mm-hmm.
Like they're always gonna listen. They're always gonna be there, and they continue ministering to those people that God has put in their life.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's uh, it's there's so much I feel like I'm leaving out that have made such a huge impact on my life. Whether it was the Oregon mission trip or the numerous National Catholic Youth Conferences I attended, or uh, the I feel like it's hundreds of retreats, not hundreds, but it was a lot. It's a lot of
It's been a
retreats.
lot of retreats,
It's a
yes.
lot of retreats. I've been fortunate to see, uh, one of the camps that at least our diocese often goes to is Whispering Winds, and
Hmm.
uh, I've I think you've been there, right?
Yeah, yeah, I've been a couple times.
I've I've been to that campsite where before there were actual buildings, everything was in a tent. And to see that, it was crazy, man. And you would go to these retreats in the wintertime. They would have like the ceiling heaters, and it was just freezing, and the bathrooms were outside, so you had to go take your showers outside. And
Oh man.
to see how um that campsite has evolved over time is so crazy and mind blowing to me. I've built great relationships with the staff there. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't there anymore. But again, those are relationships that I'll forever cherish. And yeah, I just feel like I'm missing, keeping out so much, and missing out so much. I think one of my favorite memories was my first retreat with you. Um, I think it was also with Pat,
With
right?
Pat, yeah.
Yeah. So I know Pat. I think he needed someone, another adult. I was like, oh, I know a guy. I know a great guy. Um, and so you came on board, and one of my favorite memories of that retreat was just us jamming out. That first Friday night, playing icebreakers with the kids, playing praise and worship. You on the
Yeah.
cajon, and Angel and I on stage, and there was another facilitator from St. Pat's who was on the bass. And
Oh yeah.
for most retreats, it's just Angel and I on stage. So it's a guitar and vocals. But at this retreat, we had bass guitar, we had Angel on guitar, you are on the cajon. I think there was a shaker at one point,
Yeah.
and it was such a whole vibe, and such it was like just it's great to be able to minister to the kids, but also I felt like selfishly it was like a jam session for us.
Yeah.
Uh, it was so dope. But yeah, so it's been a while, honestly, since Angel and I have kind of stepped back into that. Life happens, and uh, but it is something. Now that we're talking about, I feel like, man, I need to call Pat up right now and ask him like, let me back in.
Yeah. No, we'll always take help on our end too. We actually have a couple retreats coming up. We have one in February with St. Gabe's that I'm going to be helping with.
Mm,
But yeah, to everyone listening, just keep the youth in your prayers.
yeah,
Those retreats mean a lot. Those classes mean a lot to them, and they need the prayers right now. Like yeah, it's nice if you want to pray for us, pray for the people that are leading them, of course. But yeah, really pray for the youth, because we pray that they can open up their hearts to love, to kindness, to peace, and to God, to Jesus. So he can be transformative in their lives the same way he's been transformative with Leo and I.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Keep praying for the youth. Keep praying for more volunteers. If you feel like you have a
Yes.
calling to be a facilitator, be a catechist, hit up your local church
Yeah.
and ask. I'm sure they're always looking for help.
Yeah. Or even if you
Um,
just want to help with snacks, if you got hands, you can help.
yeah,
Yeah, we
give
can
out,
legit
give out pizza, give out pizza.
you start off just passing out snacks. Next thing you know, you're leading retreats. We actually have a story like that. One of the Toby's godparents. That's kind of how they started. Our friend Irene was the youth minister, and they were the parents of some confirmation kids, and she's like, "Oh yeah, come help out and get involved." And by that time, the following year, they were legit leading retreats. Like, so yeah, like you never know,
Yeah,
and you'll be surprised by the youth too. Like, you don't have to be like cool or anything. Like, honestly, what they crave most is authenticity. You just need to be
absolutely.
yourself and show them that you're there for them, and
Yeah,
they'll react well to that.
yeah. I feel like there's no like mold
No.
for a catechist, right? There's all kinds of youth going through the program, and so it helps to kind of have diversity in that. Um, but yeah, so much time invested in ministry. It's crazy,
And much more to come.
and much more to come. Yeah, man. So like I said, I feel like I left out a lot, but if you guys want to hear more about our ministry background, hit us up. Don't hesitate to reach out. Um, but yeah, anything else, man?
No, I agree with you. Left out so much, so many
Yeah.
stories. Maybe in a future episode we can get some of our friends on here that have led. Maybe we can get Pat on here. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see who we can get on to talk about a little bit about youth ministry. But for now, just keep them in your prayers. Uh, Thank you everyone for listening, and let us know in the comments if you've had any good experiences with youth ministry, and what that's done for you guys in your life. All right. God
All right,
bless.
everyone. God bless.